Well, Megan, thanks so much for joining me. Would love if you could tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my name is Megan Flanagan, and I currently am the Chief People Officer at a SaaS-based cybersecurity company by the name of Coro. I've grown up in the technology industry. So, I started my career very early on in large-scale market research data companies like the Nielsen Company and IRI, and then I went to work for a company out of the Silicon Valley in ad tech called Rocket Fuel and really started learning how to be a progressive HR partner. And from there, I've worked with a lot of different startups globally and have really found a niche of coming in and helping organizations frame not only their people framework, but also utilize data and technology for how we craft our employee experience and really partner with the business on that. And at the end of the day, I grew up as a recruiter, so I'm always a recruiter at heart and really involved in the recruitment.
Awesome. And tell me a little bit about Coro.
Yeah, so Coro is actually a cybersecurity company, and we were founded by four Israeli founders. And what we do is we specialize in cybersecurity for the mid market and in the small business owners. So we're really finding our niche. We'll see a lot of people in the education industry, or people in manufacturing, construction, or people that own franchises that aren't the big players and they don't have an IT department. They don't have someone to help, catch in any threat of their business. And so our platform gives them an all-in-one modular solution that allows them to protect their business.
Very cool. And how big is the company now?
Yeah, so we're about 300 employees. We have corporate offices. Our main corporate offices are located in Tel Aviv, Israel, where that is actually where all of our research and development takes place. And then we also have another corporate headquarters in Chicago, where it is the headquarters for our sales and our BDR function. And then we also have engineering offices in the Ukraine and London. And we have a marketing office in New York, and we have various employees that work 100% remote throughout the world.
So it's safe to say you guys are pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, we are. We really are. We are everywhere. We're in several continents for sure.
That's very cool. And when did you join the company?
So I joined the company almost 2 years ago. So I came in when we were still a little under 100 people. But we had the beginning of an amazing sales team in Chicago, but we knew that we were going to, hire at least 100 people and build a Chicago office. And really came in to help us not only build Chicago, but put a global perspective on the people organization and also build a people team.
And what was ultimately for the business, in talking with the executives, what was the catalyst for deciding, hey, we're going to spin up a Chicago office, we need to bring in a head of people, what
Yeah.
really sparked that for them?
Yeah, I think the head of people position, it just is a bonus that it was located in Chicago. It was really a need, not just from sales, but from a global perspective, to have a person that could come in and scale an organization. If you haven't been in the shoes of going from 100 to 200 and 200 to 500 and 500 to 1,000, it's very different growth plans. And you have to have the ability to come in at a startup level and see what we have and actually really build for the future. I think our use of technology with Kami is a great example. It was one of those things that we really wanted to get in place, an ATS, one that would evolve with us and grow with us.
What would you say is different? You mentioned going from 100 people to 200 people, 200 to 500. What would you say are some of the big differences that you see at those different phases of growth?
At the phases of growth, you have to be able to become more automated. And when we're 100 people, I just keep thinking of interviewing. You can write in interview notes. I think of like my engineering teams around the world, it was really easy for them just to have somebody come in, have three people meet with them, for them to meet in a conference room, decide who they want to hire, and not utilize any technology. And that works when you're hiring like 3 or 4 people a quarter. But when you're doubling team size, tripling team size, you really have to utilize the technology, and also you have to think of the not now, but the where are we going to be next year. And that's a very different perspective, because usually, even if you work in a 1,000-person company, you're coming in and you're doing that day-to-day work, right? Like, it's the company's established, you have your processes, maybe you're improving them or adding new things or tweaking or launching new products, but you're basically, at that company. When you're at a growth stage company that's making such significant change, you really always have to be thinking of what's next and constantly be working a step ahead. And that is one thing I've really learned to, I love it, I embrace it, but it's really important to keep that in mind, because you can't just go with the status quo, because you'll be just left behind.
And I imagine, as the company grows, you're bringing a lot more hiring managers into the process. There's constantly interviews going on, and you're at different stages of every single hiring process across all these jobs with all these different people involved. So it probably becomes, a pretty big lift to manage that and keep it all coordinated while ensuring that the hiring process is running smooth, so you get somebody fast, but also so the candidate has a positive experience as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I think having a great ATS is really important to the candidate experience. And there is the buzzword of like candidate experience. And I feel like it's changed even now. Like, the market's very different. And if you're a great developer or a great salesperson, you have several options of places to go. And so we really have to, from that first time you click apply to the time that you start your first day, it's really important to have that experience and to have it be seamless and to have it be buttoned up. I think back to a decade or so ago, where it was all about, we brought the candidates in and we were recruiters, and we would bring them in for the interview days and shuffle them around, and we'd have beautiful presentations and folders. And now it's taking that experience and bundling that in technology. Like, was my interview easy to schedule? Did I have good communication? So we have a very defined process where we let the hiring managers choose a few different people to be in their interview team, but we have a people person interview every candidate that we hire at Coro. And when I meet with candidates, the one thing that I really want to tell them is thank you. By the time they've made it to the people interview, they've invested 5 hours at least. They've gone through 3 interviews or so. They've researched the company, and I share it's really important for them to interview us as much as we're interviewing them, and to thank them for the time that they invested. And at times, employers sometimes forget that we are competing with other people, and it shows a lot about your culture and what it's going to be like to work there. Your recruitment process should really mirror that.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a really interesting point, especially in today's market and with a lot of companies going remote or hybrid. Like you mentioned, before you'd bring candidates into the office, there was a lot of the candidate experience was around like wowing them with the things you're able to offer and the office culture and, walking them through a beautiful workspace and things like that. All, employers thought, at least, and I'm sure candidates did as well, that factored into ultimately their decision. But now with a lot of companies in more of a remote environment, that's not really the priority from a candidate experience standpoint. Really what you can do to demonstrate how your organization stands out versus other employers is run a really sound process, right? And impress the candidate from the standpoint where it's like, wow, I think you used the phrase buttoned up. That company really has it together. It seems like they're very in sync. In order for them to be so in sync, that means there must be good collaboration internally and strong leadership. They've been communicative with me. They're appreciative of my time.
Yeah.
And all of those things, it sounds like what you're saying are what really makes a company stand out today. Whereas, in the past, like I remember this as well when we'd interview people at Spark, how we bring them through our office. It's like, oh, like here's the kitchen and there's beer and LaCroix in the fridge. And like, here's all these people high-fiving
Yeah.
on the sales floor. And it's like, you don't have those same opportunities to show that side of the business. So a lot of it now has to show through your process, if that makes sense.
Totally. And don't get me wrong, we are able to showcase like the fun things, but it is really candidates are looking for something, I want to say, more meaningful. And one thing that we've really tried to do is utilize me to really create job descriptions and role clarity. I think that's really important through the process, and where, at times we've had a few candidates that have said, you know what, this isn't for me. And we're so appreciative of that, because it's like, okay, great. Like let's have that now before you start and you've been here for 5 or 6 months and you realize this isn't what you really wanted to do. I think we've seen a lot of that actually with some of our BDR hiring. People, it's an entry level job. We're super clear about the expectations of the role. Like, you have to make X amount of calls a day. This is what the promotion path looks like. Like, you're going to be in this role for a year. We actually do bring them into the office to shadow and see what it's like to be on the sales floor. And we've had a few people that say, you know what? Thanks so much for bringing me in and like such a great clarity in the interview process, because I don't really want to do that. And like, how great. Like that's wonderful. Like, that's why we have the interview process. And even down to marketing roles, it's really important that when we hire people, they know what's expected of them, because ultimately I don't think anybody enters into a job partnership with wanting to do a bad job. And so we want people, anybody that joins Coro, to really know, okay, in the first 90 days, this is what I need to do to be successful. Here it was listed in the job description. This is what I went through in the interview process. These are, my expectations. And I think that's really important to the process. And honestly, we wouldn't be able to do that without the technology. We're really able to share job descriptions. We're able to also store job descriptions. We can easily reopen a job. We're also able to look at candidates and say, maybe not for this role, but a different role. We actually had somebody in our marketing team that we interviewed for like a different type of channel role. And we were like, oh my gosh, she would be excellent here. But it was 2 months or so after her first interview. But because we had those notes, because we had that information, we were easily able to, one, get in contact with her. We provided her with a great experience, and we had a great role for her. Now she's an employee.
That's great. And a lot of that, she probably, was re-engaged with you guys and ended up taking the job because of the experience she had the first time around. And then, so even though she didn't end up getting that initial job, she was
Yeah.
still so impressed by the company that she was motivated to take another role, which, ended up being a better fit anyways. I'm curious, on the role clarity side, you mentioned, how are you incorporating that into your process? Like, at what point are you telling candidates, here's what to expect in your first 90 days, or here's
Yeah.
what you're measured on when you come on board? You're a BDR, you're going to have to make this many calls, all that type of stuff. Where are you putting that in your process?
We put it through the whole process. So we spend a lot of time doing what we call like a hiring workshop and working through the job. So it's not just hiring managers saying, okay, like let's reopen the job, or I pulled a job description. We have really, we have a focused conversation on what are you looking for? What are the requirements of the role? And it's not the recruitment kickoff. It is, let's define this role and success in the role. And then we have like the actual recruitment kickoff with the strategy. And so we do really interview to that job description. And from the very first phone screen, really share with candidates, this is what you'll be doing. Are you comfortable with this? Even with, engineering, it's really important for people to understand we're global, and they're working with people in the UK, they're working with people in the US. I mean, our engineers work day and night. And so when you join that team in London, it's important to know what you're joining. And so we really try to give a really good description of not only the clarity, but the expectations of the role and what our work environment is. It's kind of like, you don't want to move on from that initial screen either if you're not a fit for compensation. And I'm not talking just, a little here or there, but like if it's really not going to work out, like let's not waste our time. And I think that's something that's important too when you think about scaling in your question from 100 to 200 or 100 to 500, like we have to be really smart about our interview process. And we really rely heavily on taking the time to do a really thorough, in-depth pre-screen with the recruiters. And I know we use Commit to really look at our conversion rates and what it takes to get somebody through the process and build our funnel, because our hiring managers, in sales they need to be making sales calls, and engineering they're creating products, and everyone's super busy. So we want to make sure that the time that our managers spend in the process is really worth their while, and that it's our goal as a people team is that they always have a choice. They always have a choice in candidates, so that they get a candidate pool where they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know who I want to choose.
Yeah, that's great. I think there's two things there that you said that really stand out to me. First is when you're scaling very quickly, you can't afford to be taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back when it comes to the people that you're bringing on board. And so the interview process and the hiring process as a whole has to be really thorough, both to ensure that you find a qualified person that's going to do the job, but also that there's really good buy-in from the candidate and total transparency about what the expectations are from your side and what they should expect when they join the organization as well. And that's how you keep taking those 2 steps forward versus 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and how you go from 100 to 200, 200 to 500 very quickly, right? If you're constantly having to go back because retention's low, because you're not getting that buy-in earlier on in the hiring process, you'll never be able to hit the growth numbers and support the business's talent acquisition team like you need to. And then the second thing you said, which I think is really important for a lot of teams to keep in mind, is that, hiring managers are super busy. They've got their regular day-to-day jobs.
So busy.
That they've got to keep up with, on top of working with the talent acquisition team to hire people to come onto their team and join their team and help them do all the things that they need to do. So how, can you give a glimpse into the way that you work with your hiring managers and help instill the disciplines of your hiring process with them?
Yeah, so we try to really have everybody utilize Commit and get the feedback in, and we have a process, but it's also really getting smarter about how we hire. So we have data from, the last 12 to 18 months, and we really look at the conversion rates to see what's working and what types of recruiters work best on what roles. We also, as you mentioned, we have to work really fast. So we've cross-trained our entire recruitment team. Like all of us can recruit for another position. And a lot of times we actually double team things. So like right now we've kicked off some new engineering roles in the UK, and we have our US recruiter working on just getting a pipeline and helping screen candidates, so that we know that when we get, I don't want to necessarily give away your numbers,
Sure.
but once we talk to 50 engineers, we're going to fill this position.
Mm-hmm.
And we know what looking at 50 quality pre-screens looks like. And so to wrap this all up though, to get it with how do we use this to work with our managers, is we've really built trust with them to say not only are we great recruiters, we find people, but we're super data savvy and we're really considerate of your time. And also it's really important to run a process. And so we talked about how we have the recruitment screen, and we really set the stage for, do you meet the qualifications? Do you understand the role? And then we have a defined interview process that the hiring manager has agreed upon, where they're interviewing for skill set. They'll have a peer, they have a defined interview team that goes to interview for further skill. And then the people team does an interview focused on culture fit. And then we wrap up and do a knowledge share. So a lot of times we'll interview the top 3 to 5 candidates, and then we all come together as a team and do the knowledge share. Not only is the knowledge share so valuable for actually hiring that particular candidate, but it's really valuable at us getting smarter, because we know now what everyone looks for. And then when we come together as a team and we collaborate, we know what we all want. And again, it's just making our recruiters smarter. So I do think that managers really appreciate our partnership and our dedication to actually really running a thorough process and then utilizing data to help make their process smarter. And we're constantly trying to make it better for them.
Yep. I love that you guys are so data driven. I think that makes your hiring process, like you said, rather predictable because I need to get, we need a source, we need to get this many number of applicants or candidates at the top of our funnel to yield Y through the recruitment screen.
Yeah.
And so at each step kind of what the benchmarks you need to hit for specific roles, which then allows you to back into a strategy to make sure that you're hitting those certain parameters and know whether you're on or off track for that role, which allows you to be very communicative then with, and I also love that you guys, with the knowledge share, like you said, you're learning about how you all are evaluating candidates and what you're looking for. And by having that, whether you're continuing to hire for that role or another role in the future with the same hiring team, you're able to kind of view, some of the interviews through the lens of what different people on the team are looking for, and you're able to bring that. So maybe you come to a knowledge share and it's like you say to a colleague, hey, John, I know you really look for this in candidate for this role. This stuck out to me in the interview about that, and I wanted to share that with you because maybe John didn't get that in his interview, but you knew to have your ears open for those things that he's interested in and that's important to him. So I think it, fosters a lot of trust in that way.
Well, and I think it also starts to build trust for the new hire in the onboarding process. And so people want to be set up for success. And when you have your peers as part of the interview team and you've all sat down together and you've made a collaborative hiring decision and you're all bought into a person that you're hiring, it just begins that person's start in onboarding in a positive manner, because there's never anybody that's like, oh, why'd we hire this person, or who hired. We've worked at places sometimes where maybe that's happened, or sometimes where that maybe has happened in the past, but nobody ever questions our hires, and we all really feel not only bought in, but almost a little bit of ownership for their success, because you're like, well, like I interviewed that person, like they're going to be successful. We all interviewed these people and we feel very confident in them joining our organization.
Totally. And I think from the candidate's perspective too, it has to give them a boost or a sense of confidence in coming into the organization when they know, hey, I went through this process. I interviewed with different people from the people team, the hiring manager, peer interview. All these people were involved in the process, and they all gave the thumbs up to hire me, and they were all on the same page, and it was a tightly run process. And so for the candidate, that has to give them a good sense as well. I think a lot of companies, it's a recruiter, if that sometimes, and a hiring manager interview, and that's about it. And all they know really is the HR person or the recruiter and the person that's going to be their manager, and they weren't really exposed to other people throughout the company and saw that those other people weren't involved in the process. So it's a little shaky when they come on board because it's like, I don't really know anybody. Like, does everybody want me here? Like, it's kind of that awkward feeling. And so I think when you have
Totally
that like team-based
awkward.
approach, it really gives them more confidence.
Totally. They start day one and they know familiar faces and they have an idea too of what's expected of them. And so I think it is really important. I think that has been really part of our success too, of having that ownership in the hiring process. It's not just one hiring manager, especially as we get more senior into more senior roles or roles that are working cross-functionally. It is important that they meet all their peers and or counterparts and really have that interdepartment buy-in.
Yep. And I know we didn't really discuss this, I guess, at the top of the episode, but one question I do have is, your role. Like, obviously, talent acquisition is a function of your role, but I know from your title, it's probably a bit more broad than that. So maybe just quick overview on like all the areas that you cover as a people leader.
Yeah, so as a people leader, talent acquisition is only one filter of my role. So I oversee all of our people operations, which we lump together is the operations. So HRS, our payroll, our legal compliance that I put in people operations, our health, our benefits, and that's really important when I say benefits, not only in the US, but it's really important that we have a global benefit structure and we have a global benefit strategy. So that's also under people operations. And then my next bucket that I oversee is our employee experience. And so we do that through HR business partners across the world that support our different functions. We have 4 people that are dedicated to TA, and then 6 people across the world that are dedicated to the operations and business partnering with the organization.
Got it. And that's what I was really curious about is you've got TA and you've got employee experience as 2 big functions under your umbrella. How do the team members that work on those different areas collaborate, right? Like your TA
Yeah.
team is all about the experience as part of the hiring process, but there has to be some type of bridge to the true employee experience. So how
Mhm.
are they working together to ensure like the candidate and then the employee gets that same, smooth
Experience.
experience, positive experience, depending on where they're at in the life cycle with you guys?
Yeah. So one of the things that we've done is we've really integrated talent acquisition with our business partners as well. So at times it's been maybe the organizational design of you have talent and then you have HR, and they really don't work very well together or really in tandem, or it's like talent's out there hiring, taking orders from HR, they're letting them know they're filling positions, and we have like an overall perspective of really looking at talent. And so our recruiters also work with our HR business partners as part of like the role definitions in really making sure that we have the right roles. They do a lot as well in the comp sector and working with comparative and like competitive analysis to, because we have to make sure we're paid right in the market, and the market's always changing. So they run our comp data, they're getting the data from what's in the market, and also they're out there interviewing people, so they interview a lot in the market and work really closely with their HR business partner for that business unit to make sure that we have the right roles defined, that we're finding the right things in the marketplace, and really that is a big bridge there. We're in on the people team, we love a little project. So every quarter we have 3 to 4 really big people projects that we work on, and we have different leaders for each of those projects, and then we intertwine the teams. So it's not just like recruiting or HR business partners, but everybody's part of one of these people projects that is ultimately one of our big corporate goals.
Got it. So are those like OKRs basically that roll up to the company
Yeah,
objective? Yeah.
yeah,
Got it.
yeah,
Very cool.
yeah,
Well, Megan, this was awesome. I feel like I've learned a lot about Coro. You and I obviously go back years, so I've known you well
yeah. It's
before
so
this call,
fun.
but super pumped to have you on here and hear about everything that you're up to, and just thank you so
Absolutely.
much for your
Thank you
time.
so
Yeah,
much.
thanks.
Thank you so much for having me. And you can't say enough great things about just the ease of Kami and the way it's been able to work with us and the use of technology. And, we wouldn't be able to scale without an ATS. So
That's great.
it's been very helpful.
That's great. Well, thanks.